Welcome back to MetaBook. In the last chapter, we explored how the mind avoids the now, how it uses worry, mental noise, internal commentary, emotional reactivity, and past-future identity to escape the present moment. But Chapter 5 is different. It's not about escape, it's about arrival. If the previous chapters were about removing the clouds, this one is about finally seeing the sky. The state of presence is not a theory, not a technique, not a philosophy. It is a shift in the quality of being. A change in the way awareness relates to experience. A movement from thinking into knowing, from noise into clarity, from doing into being. Tolle begins this chapter with a simple truth. Presence is not something you create. It is something you uncover. It's not a skill like learning a language. It's not a ritual like meditation. It's not a mood like calmness or relaxation. Presence is what remains when the unnecessary falls away. It's what emerges when the mind stops insisting on being the center of everything. Think of it this way. The space in your room is always there, but if the room is stacked with boxes and furniture and noise, you forget the space exists. Presence is that inner space, and the mind, with all its habits, has filled that inner space with thought objects, ideas, expectations, worries, identity, memory. This chapter is about remembering the space behind all those objects. Presence begins with a subtle shift inside you, a kind of dropping inward, a moment when your attention stops leaning forward into the next moment and comes fully into this one. The mind quiets, not because you force it, but because awareness becomes stronger than thought. This shift is delicate at first, a small pause, a silence between two thoughts, a breath that feels suddenly real, a sensation in your hands that you notice for the first time. These small openings are not insignificant, they are the doorway to presence. The state of presence is a state of intense aliveness. Not excitement, but aliveness. Not stimulation, but clarity. Tolle describes the now as a field of conscious energy, a space in which everything happens and yet nothing sticks. When you are present, you feel connected, not to an idea, but to life itself. And here the chapter becomes very clear. Presence is not thinking about being present. Presence is being here before thought begins about it. When someone speaks to you and you truly listen, without planning your response, without judging, without drifting, this is presence. When you walk and actually feel your steps instead of rehearsing conversations in your head, this is presence. When you sit and look around without naming things, without describing them, just seeing, this is presence. Presence is simple, yet the mind finds it uncomfortable. Not because presence is hard, but because presence exposes the ego's illusion. In presence, you do not think who you are. You do not plan life, you meet it. You do not judge reality, you experience it. This is why the ego resists presence. The ego survives through story, and presence dissolves story. Tolle explains that presence comes in degrees. Sometimes it's mild, a moment of stillness when you sip tea or watch the rain. Sometimes it's stronger, a deep sense of spaciousness inside your chest, and sometimes, rarely but unmistakably, it becomes overwhelming, a complete dropping into the now, where thought stops on its own and a vast stillness opens. This deep presence is life-changing. It feels like waking up from a dream you didn't know you were in. Colors become vivid, sounds become crisp, your sense of separateness softens, and you feel like the world has become alive again. But the chapter warns, don't chase this state, because chasing pulls you out of it. Presence happens when you stop demanding things from the moment. Another major section of this chapter talks about the relationship between presence and inner body awareness. The body is always in the now. It cannot follow the mind into past or future. So when you bring attention to the body, from the inside, not by thinking about it. You anchor yourself in presence. Tolle explains that the body is like a doorway. If you sense the aliveness in your hands, or feel the inner energy in your chest, or notice the subtle vibration in your whole body, you enter a deeper layer of now. Then the chapter expands further. Presence reduces fear, because fear cannot exist without the future. Presence dissolves regret, because regret cannot exist without the past. Presence reduces overthinking, because overthinking needs time, and presence collapses time. Presence does not remove problems, but it removes the psychological weight you add to them. It separates the situation from the story, and without the story, situations become manageable. A pivotal point of the chapter is when Tolle reveals the difference between clock time and psychological time. Clock time is practical, used for appointments, planning, learning. Psychological time is mental, used for fear, identity, worry, memory. Presence keeps clock time but dissolves psychological time. This is why a present person can function effectively while being deeply peaceful inside. The chapter grows even deeper. It says presence is not just a human ability, it is a dimension of consciousness itself. When you are present, you align with something larger than your personal identity. You feel connected to life, to existence, to being. Presence brings intelligence, not from the mind, but from awareness. Decisions become clearer, reactions become softer. Your interactions become more compassionate. You respond instead of reacting. One of the most important insights in this chapter is the idea that presence is the end of suffering, not the end of pain. Pain is part of human life. But suffering, the psychological overlay added by thought, cannot survive in the now. When you are present, pain is just pain, a sensation, a feeling, not a story, not a judgment, not a future forecast. Presence removes the me behind the pain. When there is no me suffering, there is only sensation passing through. And this leads to the core message of Chapter 5. Presence is not something you achieve. It is what remains when the noise stops. It's always here, waiting beneath the mind, like a clear sky behind clouds. Your job is not to create presence. Your job is to notice when the mind leaves it and gently return. The more often you return, the more the now becomes your home, not a place you visit, but the place you live from.